One of your upstream APIs goes down. You have no circuit breaker. Every request waits for the full timeout 30 seconds. Threads pile up. Your connection pool exhausts. Now your service is returning 500s to clients who never touched that upstream API. One broken dependency took down your entire service. That's the cascade. A circuit breaker stops it. This video walks through the full circuit breaker state machine, closed, open, and half open, and how to compose one with retries and timeouts. You will be able to implement this pattern and explain the trade-offs. Picture a service with a 30-second timeout calling a dependency that's timing out on every request. With 100 concurrent calls, you have 100 threads blocked for 30 seconds each. That's 3,000 thread seconds of capacity doing nothing. Meanwhile, new requests keep arriving. The thread pool exhausts. The queue fills. Your service stops responding. No breaker means every call waits for the full timeout. The thread is unavailable for any other work during that wait. This is the mechanism of the cascade, held threads, exhausted pool, service-wide failure. Timeouts are necessary, you should always have them. But if the dependency is constantly failing, a timeout just means each thread waits 30 seconds instead of forever. You still exhaust the thread pool, it just takes a little longer. A circuit breaker stops you from making the calls at all when failure is certain. In the closed state, the circuit breaker is transparent. Requests pass through to the dependency as normal. The breaker counts failures silently in the background. As long as the failure count stays below the configured threshold, the circuit stays closed and nothing changes. Here is the core logic for the closed state. Every successful call resets the failure count. Every failure increments it. Once failures hit the threshold, in this case 5, the circuit trips to open. This is a simple consecutive failure implementation. We will look at more sophisticated threshold strategies later. Resetting the failure count on success is a deliberate design. If a service is throwing occasional errors but is mostly healthy, you do not want to trip the breaker. The closed state is designed to tolerate transient failures. Only persistent, consecutive failures trigger a trip. When the breaker trips to open, the behavior changes completely. Every call to the protected function immediately fails without making a network request. This takes microseconds instead of 30 seconds. The threads that were being held waiting for timeouts are now free to handle other work. The cascade stops. In the open state, the breaker checks if enough time has passed since it opened. That's the cooldown period. If not, it throws immediately without any network call. If the cooldown has expired, it transitions to half-open to test whether the dependency has recovered. When the circuit is open, callers get an immediate error. That sounds worse than a slow timeout, but it is not. A fast error lets the caller fall back to a cache, serve a degraded response, or respond to the user quickly. A 30-second timeout gives them nothing until it expires. Fast failure is a feature. The cooldown period is how long the breaker stays open before attempting a recovery probe. A typical value is 30 to 60 seconds. This gives the failing dependency time to restart, reconnect, or shed load. Without a cooldown, the breaker would immediately send a flood of requests the moment it decided to try again, potentially re-tripping instantly. After the cooldown, the breaker enters the half-open state. It allows exactly one request through to the dependency, a probe. If the probe succeeds, the breaker resets to closed and traffic flows normally again. If it fails, the breaker goes back to open and the cooldown restarts. One request at a time, not a flood. The half-open state is simple. Allow one call through. If it succeeds, reset everything, circuit closed, failure count 0. If it fails, go back to open and restart the cooldown. The half-open probe is what gives the breaker memory. It does not go straight from open to closed based on time alone. If you go straight from open to closed, you send your full traffic volume to a service that may still be fragile. That can immediately re-trip the breaker. Then it opens again. Then the cooldown expires. Then it closes again. This is called flapping. The breaker oscillates without ever stabilizing. Half open prevents flapping by testing with one request first. Here is the full state machine in one view. Closed is the healthy default. Open is the protective fast fail state. Half open is the safe recovery gate. The transitions are driven by failure count, time, and a single probe result. There are two common threshold strategies. Count-based is simple, trip after 5 consecutive failures. But 5 failures out of 10 requests and 5 failures out of 10,000 requests are very different situations. Rate-based thresholds use a percentage of failures within a rolling time window, more accurate, but slightly more complex to implement. A rolling window tracks outcomes over the last 60 seconds. You also need a minimum call count. Without it, 2 failures from one request would trip the breaker in the middle of the night when traffic is low. Only start measuring the failure rate once you have seen enough requests to trust the signal. A threshold that is too sensitive will trip during brief, normal failure spikes, adding unnecessary errors. A threshold that is too lenient lets sustained failures pile up before protecting you. Start with conservative defaults, 50% failure rate, minimum 10 calls in the window, 30-second cooldown. Then tune based on what you see in production. A circuit breaker does not replace timeouts and retries, it composes with them. The order matters. A timeout limits how long a single call waits. A retry handles transient, recoverable errors. A circuit breaker handles sustained, non-transient failures by stopping all calls. Nest them in that order. Timeout wraps the call, retry wraps the timeout, breaker wraps the retry. Here is the correct nesting. The innermost layer is the timeout. It caps each individual attempt at 2 seconds. Retry wraps that, allowing up to 2 retries with exponential backoff and jitter. The circuit breaker wraps everything. If retries exhaust and the failure count trips the threshold, it opens and stops all calls. When a dependency goes down, every service calling it fails simultaneously. Without jitter, all of them retry at the same backoff interval and hit the recovering service at the same moment. That thundering herd can immediately re-trip the breaker. Adding random jitter to the backoff spreads retries across a window and prevents this. Retry without a circuit breaker is dangerous under sustained failure. If your dependency is down and 100 services each retry 3 times, you send 300 requests to a service that cannot respond to any of them. This prolongs the failure and can prevent recovery. The circuit breaker stops this once open. No more retries pile on. Closed is the healthy default. Open is the protective state that fast fails while the dependency recovers. Half open is the controlled reentry gate. One probe determines whether the service is ready. These 3 states and the transitions between them give you a resilient pattern that prevents one failure from becoming everyone's failure. The goal of a circuit breaker is bounded latency under failure. Without one, a single slow dependency can exhaust your thread pool and take your entire service offline. With one, failures are fast, isolated, and self-healing. Compose it correctly, timeout inside, retry in the middle, breaker on the outside, and one broken service stays one broken service.